Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. What if the home you worked your whole life to pay off was suddenly taken from you without your knowledge? For Adam Grant, a quiet suburban dad, this nightmare became a reality. A shady HOA, forged documents, and a relentless fight for justice turned his world upside down. This is the story of his incredible battle. Adam Grant, a 42-year-old software engineer, prided himself on his home, an elegant yet practical two-story house nestled in the outskirts of Oregon. Built 12 years ago, it wasn't just a house. It was a fortress of memories, painstakingly paid off 3 years ago after a decade of hard work. For Adam and his wife Rachel, a dedicated nurse, clearing the mortgage had felt like reaching the summit of a personal Everest. It wasn't just financial freedom, it was a tangible reward for their shared sacrifices. Their daughters, Emma, a bright-eyed 12-year-old with an artistic streak, and Sophia, a bubbly 8-year-old with a love for adventure, had known no other home. The backyard had hosted birthday parties, the porch had witnessed countless sunsets, and the living room walls were a canvas of family milestones. This wasn't just property, it was their history. The neighborhood, a patchwork of unique homes scattered across a peaceful suburban landscape, had always seemed idyllic. Unlike the cookie-cutter subdivisions with overly involved homeowners associations, HOAs, the Grant Street offered quiet autonomy. While some nearby communities had recently fallen under the sway of HOA rules, the Grants had never signed a contract, paid a fee, or attended a meeting. For them, HOA was just an acronym whispered in other people's conversations. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the illusion of tranquility shattered. Adam was in his home office, engrossed in coding, when his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Normally, he'd ignore it, but an instinct, or perhaps curiosity, made him pick up. "Hello, Mr. Grant," a calm male voice began. "This is Ryan Bennett. I'm calling about the property at 112 Maple Crescent. That's your house, correct?" Adam frowned. "Yes, that's my house. What's this about?" There was a brief pause before Ryan delivered the bombshell. "Actually, it's not anymore. I recently purchased it at auction. I drove by earlier and saw that you're still living there. I wanted to touch base, as you'll need to vacate soon." Adam's heart stopped for a second before fury took over. "What the hell are you talking about? That's my house. I paid off the mortgage years ago." Ryan's voice remained frustratingly composed. According to the records, it was foreclosed by the Waverly Hills HOA over unpaid dues. "I purchased it legally for $180,000. You should check with the county if you think there's been a mistake." Adam's mind raced. Foreclosure? Waverly Hills HOA? Dues? None of it made sense. He slammed the phone down, his hands shaking with anger and disbelief. Rachel, drawn by the tension in his voice, appeared in the doorway. "What happened?" As Adam recounted the bizarre conversation, her expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "That can't be right," she insisted. "We've never been part of an HOA." But Ryan's words echoed in Adam's head. "Check with the county if you think there's been a mistake." Adam realized he had no choice but to investigate. Adam barely slept the night after his call with Ryan Bennett. Every shadow cast by the familiar contours of their home seemed ominous, as if the walls themselves might betray him. By morning, his resolve was set. He needed answers. Armed with his property deed and a growing sense of unease, he headed to the county courthouse. The records office was a sterile, fluorescent-lit labyrinth of bureaucracy. Adam handed his documents to the clerk and explained his situation. After a few minutes of typing and frowning at her computer screen, she retrieved a file. "Here's what we have on record," she said, sliding it across the counter. Adam scanned the file, his stomach twisting with every line. The house had indeed been foreclosed upon, sold for $180,000 to Ryan Bennett. The reason? A debt of $8,500 in unpaid dues to the Waverly Hills HOA. Adam's head swam. He had never agreed to be part of an HOA, let alone incurred such a debt. It was as if reality itself was unraveling. Back home, Adam laid out the findings to Rachel. Her face went pale. "This can't be happening," she whispered. "We've never signed anything with Waverly Hills. I mean, remember those brochures we got years ago? We tossed them because we didn't even live in their boundaries." The realization hit them both like a freight train. Someone, somewhere, had manipulated the system to claim their home. Determined to fight back, Adam contacted Julia Stern, a local attorney with a reputation for taking on HOAs. Within hours of reviewing the case, Julia confirmed Adam's worst fears. "This is a mess," she said. "From what I can see, your so-called membership in the HOA is based on a document that appears questionable. I need time to dig deeper, but this isn't adding up." Over the next few days, Julia's investigation uncovered a trail of red flags. The contract enrolling the Grants in the Waverly Hills HOA bore a signature that did not match Adam's. Furthermore, all notifications about the alleged dues had been sent to an outdated address, one the Grants hadn't lived at in over a decade. It was becoming increasingly clear that the HOA had been banking on the family's ignorance to push through the foreclosure without resistance. Meanwhile, the pressure from Ryan Bennett intensified. He began calling daily, each conversation more assertive than the last. "Mr. Grant," he said during one particularly tense exchange, "I understand this is upsetting, but you're squatting in a house that no longer belongs to you. If you don't vacate voluntarily, I'll have no choice but to pursue legal action." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. Rachel, desperate for support, reached out to their neighbors. While some expressed sympathy, most were hesitant to get involved. "I'm sorry," one said apologetically, "but the Waverly Hills HOA is powerful. I can't risk them coming after my property." The strain began to seep into the fabric of the family. The girls overheard whispered conversations and asked questions that Rachel struggled to answer. "Mommy," Sophia asked one evening, "are we going to lose our house?" Rachel hugged her tightly, fighting back tears. "We're doing everything we can, sweetie." As the days wore on, Julia finalized her strategy. "We're filing a counterclaim," she told Adam. "Not only are we challenging the foreclosure, but we're also accusing the HOA of fraudulent practices. They forged documents, manipulated addresses, and acted in bad faith. This isn't just negligence, it's deliberate." But Julia also warned the Grants to brace themselves for a drawn-out battle. HOAs don't like to admit fault, and Waverly Hills has a lot to lose. They're going to fight tooth and nail. Despite the mounting stress, Adam felt a flicker of hope. He wasn't alone in this fight. With Julia's expertise and their unwavering determination, he was ready to take on the system that had turned their lives upside down. Yet, the road ahead promised to be fraught with challenges that neither he nor his family could yet imagine. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Adam Grant and his attorney Julia Stern prepared to face the Waverly Hills HOA in what promised to be a dramatic battle. Julia had spent weeks meticulously building the case, uncovering a web of deception and overreach that painted the HOA not as a community caretaker, but as a predatory entity exploiting loopholes for profit. For Adam, it was no longer just about his home. It was about exposing a system that had quietly victimized countless others. The evidence Julia had amassed was damning. She presented a series of forged documents that purported to show Adam's agreement to join the HOA. Handwriting experts confirmed the signatures were not Adam's, a revelation that drew gasps from the packed courtroom. Further records showed that all notices of unpaid dues had been sent to an outdated address, an address the Grants had not used in over a decade. Julia argued that this was no accident. It was a calculated move to keep the family in the dark until the foreclosure was complete. The most shocking piece of evidence, however, was a financial audit. Julia revealed that over the past 3 years, the HOA had conducted 24 similar foreclosures, earning over $500,000 in debt recovery and subsequent property sales. "This isn't governance," Julia declared, her voice ringing through the courtroom. "This is a racket." As Julia laid out the evidence, Ryan Bennett, the man who had purchased the Grants' home, sat quietly in the back, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. For weeks, Ryan had maintained his stance as the rightful owner of the house. But after learning of the HOA's tactics and realizing he too had been misled, his tone shifted. He contacted Julia with documents from his purchase agreement, which highlighted the HOA's role in orchestrating the sale. "They told me everything was legitimate," Ryan admitted. "I didn't know they were pulling this kind of scheme." Ryan's cooperation was a turning point. He not only provided crucial documents, but also agreed to testify against the HOA, exposing the extent of their deception. His testimony would prove pivotal in dismantling their credibility. Meanwhile, news of the case spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. Families who had quietly suffered under the HOA's heavy hand began to come forward, sharing their own stories of intimidation and foreclosure threats. Julia incorporated their accounts into the case, painting a picture of an HOA that had long operated with unchecked power. The tide was turning. Waverly Hills HOA, once feared and respected, now faced mounting public scrutiny. Even some board members began to distance themselves from the president, Linda Harper, whose steely demeanor began to crack under the weight of the revelations. The courtroom was packed on the day of the final hearing. The HOA's legal team, a polished and expensive cadre of attorneys, opened by insisting they had acted within the bounds of their authority. The grants were notified, they claimed, and the foreclosure was conducted in accordance with the law. Julia stood to counter. If by accordance with the law, they mean fabricating documents, sending notices to incorrect addresses, and forging signatures, then yes, they followed their own version of the law. She methodically dismantled the HOA's defense. She introduced Ryan Bennett, whose testimony delivered the final blow. Taking the stand, Ryan described how he had been assured by HOA representatives that the sale was above board. "I trusted them," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "But it's clear now they were lying. To me, to the grants, to everyone." Julia seized the moment. "Mr. Bennett, if you had known about the forged documents and the deliberate misdirection of notices, would you have purchased the property?" "Absolutely not," Ryan replied. "I would have run the other way." The HOA's defense crumbled under the weight of the evidence. Even the judge, a seasoned veteran of property disputes, seemed visibly appalled. He interrupted the HOA's lead attorney mid-sentence, demanding clarity on how such blatant violations could occur under their watch. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension as the judge returned with his decision. Adam and Rachel Grant sat holding hands, their nerves frayed from weeks of stress and uncertainty. Across the room, the Waverly Hills HOA's legal team fidgeted nervously, their confident facade now replaced with visible unease. As the judge began to speak, his tone was firm, authoritative, a voice that brooked no argument. "The foreclosure on the Grant residence is declared null and void," he stated unequivocally. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom, followed by murmurs of approval from spectators. This court finds that the Waverly Hills Homeowners Association acted fraudulently and violated the rights of the plaintiffs. Ownership of the property is hereby reinstated to the Grant family. Adam exhaled deeply, relief washing over him like a tidal wave. He glanced at Rachel, who wiped away tears of joy. Their fight was over, at least this chapter of it. But the judge wasn't done. Furthermore, he continued, the Waverly Hills HOA is ordered to pay the Grants $50,000 to cover legal expenses and an additional $150,000 in damages for the emotional distress caused by their actions. Additionally, the HOA is fined $500,000 for systemic violations and manipulation, including the falsification of documents and improper foreclosure practices. These funds will be used to investigate and address similar complaints from other residents. The hammer of justice had struck decisively, and the fallout was immediate. The news of the court's decision spread quickly throughout the neighborhood and beyond. Within hours, social media buzzed with headlines about the Grant family's victory and the HOA's misconduct. Waverly Hills, once seen as an emblem of suburban order, was now the face of HOA corruption. Encouraged by the Grants' victory, other homeowners began stepping forward. At least 6 families filed lawsuits against the HOA, alleging similar abuses of power. Many of these families had quietly endured years of threats and fines, fearing retaliation if they spoke out. Now bolstered by the Grants' success, they found their voices. Community meetings turned into heated forums where residents demanded transparency and accountability. Longtime neighbors shared stories of intimidation and overreach, from arbitrary fines to attempts at foreclosure for minor infractions. What once had been whispered in hushed tones was now being broadcast loud and clear. The Waverly Hills HOA had betrayed the very community it claimed to serve. The pressure became too much for Linda Harper, the HOA president. Once a commanding figure in neighborhood politics, she resigned amid mounting criticism and the weight of impending legal battles. Her polished reputation lay in tatters as evidence of her involvement in fraudulent practices surfaced. Emails and memos revealed that she had personally approved several of the questionable foreclosures, prioritizing profits over fairness. The remaining members of the HOA board scrambled to distance themselves from Harper. They issued a public statement apologizing for the mistakes made under her leadership and promising reforms. But for many residents, it was too little, too late. Calls for a complete reorganization of the HOA grew louder, with demands for independent oversight and new bylaws to prevent further abuse. For Adam and Rachel, the courtroom victory marked the beginning of a new chapter. Their home was theirs once again, and the weight of uncertainty was finally lifted. The $150,000 in damages was not just compensation, it was a symbol of their resilience and the justice they had fought so hard to achieve. The Grants used part of the settlement to repair and upgrade their home, a gesture of defiance against those who had tried to take it from them. They also donated a portion to a local advocacy group dedicated to helping homeowners fight unfair HOA practices. The fallout from the case extended far beyond the neighborhood. Advocacy groups and journalists highlighted the Grants case as a watershed moment in the fight against HOA overreach. State lawmakers began discussing potential reforms to protect homeowners from predatory associations. Waverly Hills became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. For Adam and Rachel, life slowly returned to normal, but their battle had sparked something greater, a movement that challenged the status quo and inspired others to stand up for their rights. As they sat on their porch one quiet evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, they felt a sense of peace that had eluded them for months. Their home, their sanctuary, was finally safe, and so was their community. The weeks following the court's decision brought a much-needed sense of relief to the Grant family. For the first time in months, Adam, Rachel, and their daughters could sit in their living room without a cloud of uncertainty hanging over them. Their home, the symbol of their hard work and perseverance, was once again truly theirs. The legal victory had not only protected their property, but also reaffirmed their belief in standing up for what was right. With the compensation awarded by the court, the Grants took the opportunity to invest in their home and their future. They repaired worn parts of the house, upgraded the kitchen Rachel had always dreamed of modernizing, and turned their backyard into a sanctuary, complete with a new garden and play area for the girls. It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about reclaiming their space and turning it into an even stronger fortress of memories. Adam and Rachel also set aside funds for an educational trust for Emma and Sophia. "This is for you," Adam told them one evening at the dinner table, his voice thick with emotion. "Your future, your dreams, nothing and no one will take that away from us again." But Adam wasn't content to let the experience end there. Motivated by the support they had received from neighbors and the wider community, he decided to channel his energy into helping others. Adam organized a series of neighborhood meetings to educate homeowners about their rights and the risks of unchecked HOA power. The gatherings grew from small living room discussions to well-attended forums, with residents sharing their own stories and strategies for holding their associations accountable. The Grants' victory ignited a wave of change within the Waverly Hills community. Empowered by the outcome, a group of neighbors banded together to push for the complete dissolution of the HOA. Petitions circulated, meetings were held, and momentum built steadily. The corruption uncovered during the trial had left an indelible mark on the community, and residents were determined to ensure such abuses would never happen again. Meanwhile, the case caught the attention of local officials and advocacy groups. Adam was invited to speak at town hall meetings, sharing his family's journey and emphasizing the need for reform. Inspired by the Grants, state legislators began drafting a new bill aimed at protecting homeowners from the kind of manipulative practices exposed during the trial. The proposed law included stricter oversight of HOAs, transparency requirements, and safeguards against predatory foreclosures. The impact of the case reached far beyond the neighborhood. Media outlets covered the story extensively, sparking a national conversation about the power dynamics between HOAs and homeowners. Advocacy groups used the Grants' experience as a rallying cry for broader systemic change, calling for stronger regulations across the country. For the Grants, life slowly returned to normal, but the battle left them with a renewed sense of purpose. Adam continued to lead community discussions, while Rachel supported local efforts to provide legal resources for families facing similar struggles. Even Emma and Sophia, now more aware of the importance of standing up for fairness, volunteered alongside their parents at neighborhood events. One sunny afternoon, as Adam looked out over his now thriving backyard, he reflected on the journey. What had started as a fight to save their home had transformed into something much greater, a movement that united a community and sparked meaningful change. The house was still the same, but the Grants were stronger, their bond unshakable. They had turned adversity into opportunity, and their story was a beacon for others navigating similar challenges. For the Grants and their neighbors, the future looked brighter than ever. Waverly Hills wasn't just a neighborhood anymore. It was a testament to the power of resilience and collective action. As Adam sat on the porch one crisp autumn evening, the setting sun casting a warm glow over the home he had fought so hard to protect, he reflected on the journey that had brought his family to this moment. What had started as a deeply personal battle to save their house had transformed into a broader mission, one that had united neighbors, exposed corruption, and sparked meaningful change. Adam realized that protecting his home wasn't just about bricks and mortar, it was about standing up for fairness and justice in the face of unchecked power. The experience taught him the value of legal knowledge and the importance of being prepared to defend one's rights. He had learned that collective strength, neighbors supporting one another, was key to holding even the most powerful organizations accountable. The Grant family's story became a powerful reminder that resilience and determination can overcome even the most daunting challenges. HOAs, no matter how intimidating, are not above the law. Standing up for what's right isn't just a personal victory, it's a victory for everyone who dares to fight for justice.